Hey, welcome, Modern Economic Issues students from wherever you're hearing this or taking this class. We are getting started in a new unit today, and we are going to leave behind some of the big ideas of macroeconomics that we have been looking at for the last couple of weeks around globalization, ideas and connections to the coronavirus. And we're going to start to take a look at economic matters that are more local. And we're going to start with the really local and then move out and look at and see what's happening in our community. So the idea of how macroeconomics or how economics applies to a business is called microeconomics, and that's what we're going to start taking a look at in this unit. I got interested a while ago about what kind of stories are people telling about us and our community, and what kind of stories are we telling about ourselves? So I went to see the movie, many of you have seen it, Cindy La Regia. And they certainly tell a story about people in San Pedro, people from our community. I'm not sure, and I don't think it's the complete story. I think there's more to add to that story. It might have been entertaining, but it's something that is worth considering. What are the stories that people are telling about us? And what are the stories that we can tell about ourselves? So that's what the essential questions are in this unit as we start out. And we're going to take a look at collecting some entrepreneur stories. Now, storytelling is a lot different from the kind of writing and the kind of discussions that we've had recently, because we've been focused on collecting evidence, making a claim, and defending that with research. Right now, we're going to take a look at who are the people that make up our community. And our community, I've been teaching here for a long time, as you guys know. Every time I ask students how many of their parents have their own business, about 80% of the class will raise their hand. So this is a community that has grown up around entrepreneurs, and it's a very entrepreneurial community. I can say that from somebody who's lived in a lot of other places. People think about entrepreneurship here more than other places. And I think it's important to get those entrepreneur stories out. Now, stories are a lot more impactful than a lot of the research writing that we'll do. Not that that's not important, but stories are important because we remember our stories. We remember the stories that have been told us, and we remember the stories that we tell other people. Ever since the times of the caveman, we've been communicating and letting people know our ideas by stories, and these cave writings that you're looking at, cave paintings right now, are the stories of a hunt. You can see it there, and they're stories that live on because we as humans are uniquely wired to remember things and to tell stories. So I'm going to ask you in this first part of the unit to tell me an entrepreneur story. And we're going to tell it in the way that people used to tell stories, the way that the people who wrote these cave paintings told stories. We're going to tell it in a kind of a live format, in a video format, okay? Because when we communicate verbally, only about 7% of our verbal communication is what we capture, right? When we're watching someone tell us something. About 93% of our communication is nonverbal, and that occurs through body language and also through the tone of our voice. Now, the rest of this presentation is going to talk to you a little bit about how important the different components of storytelling are to the story in total. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the components of storytelling, and we're going to get ready to tell a story. Okay, so the first part about communicating, one of the few first clues to what's going on when we talk about something is the tone of our voice. So I want you to think about, and I'm going to give you a minute to try these three different exercises. We're going to count out loud from 1 to 10 in 3 different ways. The first way is if you're an angry parent who says, I'm going to count to 10, and if you're not in bed by the time I count to 10, you're in big trouble. So count to 10 as a parent that way. Okay, good. Next, you're going to count to 10 as a referee in a boxing match, as if you're counting someone out, right? As if it's the knockout count. Okay, so practice that right now. Okay, and finally, you're going to tell someone a telephone number and the phone isn't working right? Imagine your like your WhatsApp signals coming in and out, and go ahead and tell someone a telephone number in that kind of voice. Okay, good. So you can imagine and you can see in these three different examples that the tone of our voice communicates a lot, even if we say the same words. Okay, the next thing that we can find out, when we tell a story, is taking a look at someone's body language. Okay, so there's three different like examples to illustrate this point. I want you to get up and walk across the room, whether you're at home or in school, as if you are walking through a foot of snow. So, and then the second example is if you're walking through a blisteringly hot desert. And then finally, walk as if your right leg is in a cast. Pause this video so that you can do that right now. Okay, we can see from that example that our body language communicates a lot, just like tone, right? We're walking in all three of these examples, but the way we walk is saying something about us and what's going on with us. Here are the things that I want you to consider when you create a story. Think about how the story starts. That's the base camp part of the mountain. What's the setting? What's going on? Okay. Then what happens to the high on the way to the high point of the story? This is the build up about what's going on. Now, the most exciting part of the story, the summit. What's the point you want to get across? What's happening in this story, right? And then finally, the way to the bottom of the story, climbing down the mountain. And what does the story end? Does it have a moral? Does it have something that you're going to leave us with? Some thought? I think that's another important part of thinking about a story. Okay, so what are you going to do with this video story that you're going to tell? It's going to be like a video blog. Okay, so you need to, in order to do that, you're going to conduct an interview to tell a story. And you're going to pick someone in your family, someone close to you, right? Someone that you have a lot of confidence, a lot of trust with that person. And you're going to try and find their entrepreneur story. And the way you're going to do that is first, you're going to do some research. Maybe you've grown up and your family has a business and you feel like you know a lot about that business because you've been living in it your whole life. Well, take some time and do some research about that business. Find out, what they sell, how much they sell a month or a year, who started the business. It could be interesting to think about. Sometimes it's a grandparent that's founded a business and a parent that's carried on the business. How did they get the idea for that business? What was it like in the beginning? When were the times that were difficult for them, right? What were some successes that they have in the business? How does the business do now? You want to tell an entrepreneur story, and those stories are always super interesting and fascinating, right? How that business came about to meet a need that's grown up in the society. How does somebody think about starting a business, and what causes them to persevere when times get difficult? And I'm sure if you scratch beyond the surface, you'll find that there were difficult moments and challenging moments, and a lot of successes also along the way. And that's where you want to have a good background about that business on your own before you interview the person. Find out things, ask some questions that you might not have known already. Google that company and find out what information they have out there publicly. Who could you talk to give you some basic information about the business even before you interview the person that is the entrepreneur. Okay, so the first step to the task that I'm asking you to do is to do the research. Okay, get that background information. The second step is to develop a list of questions that you want to ask the person. Now, maybe your research has brought up some new ideas. Maybe there's something that you've always wondered about the business that you haven't had a chance to ask. Or maybe, how can you prepare for that interview by asking a few important questions? Now, the third step with your research and your list of questions, you're going to sit down and conduct a video interview of an entrepreneur. And the important thing when you do this is you're going to record that interview and be able to, so you can edit it later, okay? When you're doing the interview, try and listen, really, really listen to what the person is saying so that you can ask a follow-up question or, ask for some clarifying information. Uh, really try and stay present in the moment. And then the third part of what we're going to do is we're going to do some editing of that video so that we can create a really tightly knit story, and we're going to share that video as a video blog, okay? So that's where we're going in this unit.